Hi, I'm Azul, and I'm interviewing Simon on behalf of SOULand and on behalf of water. Um, some of you know a message of water was given to me by the River Dart on the 2nd of December 2016. I have since approached a few people, a few good people, men and women, to respond to that very what can I say? A very profound message of water. So Simon is going to introduce himself briefly, and then will gift us with his own response. He has read it a few times over the years, and is now willing to share some of how he's been touched, moved, and inspired by the water. So over to you, Simon, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Azul. I'm Simon. I'm currently deeply in love with life and broken by it on a regular basis. And for all intents and purposes, planning a rebellion. So some might call me an activist as well. I despise, deplore, can get very confused by that word. I would like to see it replaced with just being human. The water message. Wow, yeah, that called out to me. And in a way, I don't think I've still responded fully, listening, embodied. I busy myself too much, but at the same time, a lot of the water message has landed deep in a place of me that feels more real or more like coming home than many other parts of my life. I've been on a journey for many years now of trying to weave in or intertwine the strands of practices of spirituality and direct action and trying to make a change in this world. And what the primary message brought to me was this need of humans to listen and to listen deeply. It's rather like many things, a practice we have got out of the habit of. We hear things, we hear distraction and noises, and very rarely listen to the nature around us. And it opened something up in me as well over these past couple of years. The grief I feel, that I get cracked open by on a very regular basis, has allowed me to empty out a lot of the expectation I have around outcome, around hope over the next few years, but has helped to fill me with the listening. And in the few unbusied times of late, especially last year, had my own part of that message. And one of the things that spoke most deeply to that was this idea that we cannot save water. And I think that's the crux, and that's part of the axis upon which so much must turn upon our lives now, and especially the future. There is no saving water, as every which as much as we cannot save this planet. And instead, for me, that's about then how we get back into right relationship with ourselves by honoring water and by being with the planet, or by honoring Earth. And that again leads myself, being quite a typical Western white privileged male, into yet another tumble down journey into what our language means around this, and what honoring means in these times, and how to do that. And that's informed me from there, really. I attempted a couple of years ago, quite independently of this, to forge a deeper relationship with water. So I went out and fasted for a short while in nature. And what came to me was this idea of the vow. How do we pledge ourselves to this planet? How do we gift ourselves to this planet? And this is something that's still unraveling in me, and it's unraveling in my actions and in my being more and more initiated into these times. And I'm hoping, trusting in myself, in listening, that this will become clear, as it were. And in the same way that human language, and especially our Western language, can become so overused as to become meaningless, I think the word vow, as it were, it's almost like wanting to offer yourself up as a groom or a bride to life. Coming into that intimacy, to that conviviality around life, which I think is absolutely essential to being in these times, to feeling in these times, and also to how we move on and forward, hopefully, into gifting into the future. And in that respect, like for me, like the word love is in there very, very deeply. And for many, love is a feeling and something to be taken for granted. But for me, it's like, in these times, it's like a form of fierce practice. We must give ourselves over to it. We must become intoxicated and embroiled in it. And that in itself is a commitment and a vow to life. And of course, this brings with us grief, the fear of loss, everything else that ends up in this huge waltzing stew pot of existence. But it's that practice that I'm particularly interested in at the moment, of how we truly dance with these concepts, how we truly practice love, how we truly practice offering ourselves, how we truly practice honoring life. And that's difficult when we come from a continuity that is being torn from its own soul to an extent, when it's been cast aside for cheap trinkets and illusion. I think literally breaking the spells of those illusions is part of that process of moving forward, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I have a question arising for you, for us, really. There's 2 points in the message. One is, well, what cracks me open is the depth of love, as you talked about, from them, from all the beings to us, how they longed for us to come back to the web. I never heard this before, and I felt in my own body that I had to break and crack and be in grief for a few months to even comprehend the depth of that love, and to shift from an activist like who could have pushed a button to destroy humanity, feeling the earth would be better off, to suddenly hearing a completely different message saying, we will die until the last one, until you come back to your belonging to this life. And you can only come back by going through the gate of grief. And it seems like you and I have gone through a bit on that path for a while. I'd love you to speak to that. And also, there is at the end that sentence which gives us 5 years. It doesn't say much more about what it means, and I've been pondering, and I have some sense about what does it mean. And I don't feel it's the end of the world in 3 years, because now it's 3 years left. My sense, and I'd love you to hear from you, my sense is this is probably perhaps the time we have before there's so many crises, and so the transmutation is at such a rate that we'll just be dealing with events and crises, and that perhaps the next few years is the time to set up spaces, movements, processes, sanctuaries, grief work, all this stuff, the rebellion you're creating, all these different things that are being put in place to then welcome or not the millions of refugees and everything that's happening and the collapse of systems. So it's a big question. It's not a big question. It's two main areas. Is that shift for me was a shift of love from them to us. And then the second point is around the 5 years, which is now 3 years.
Yes, thank you, Azul. Grief, again, is not possible unless we recognize love, and again, calls us to be deeply, deeply initiated into these times. I see so many people stepping forward and being dumb in the ways of grief at the moment. I have men running away from me. I have talked to scientists who become dumb with despair because of the inability to feel the grief, because they cannot acknowledge the love or the depth of love they have. So for me, I think grief is absolutely key here. And it's a willingness to cast our nets really, really wide with that grief. I mean, really wide, and to be utterly, utterly ready to be wrecked upon the rocks of reality with it. And for me, almost every other day at the moment is a new wrecking. I had a young lady the other day, we were talking about the grief of these times, and this young woman, beautiful woman in so many ways, and she said to me of her anger and her resentment of what she perceived as the elders and the people who have squandered so much wealth and abundance. And she said, the privilege that you might have and she called me an old man, and I was like, slightly things like that, slightly. But was that we might be the last generations to die natural deaths, and that absolutely destroyed me. Wow. But her willingness to embody and to feel that, and to then move forwards through that, to cast aside the illusions of things like career, of security, and even the illusions of, in some respects, of sanity, have made her so strong, have made her so incredibly strong. And I hear that from so many of the youth at the moment. And then from the other side, I'm meeting with many, many elders at the moment who are so heartbroken at what we are handing over. And yet in that heartbreak, in that moment of like thunder crack, feeling it deep in your guts, is this absolute diamond clarity of intention to change, to make change, to make meaning, and to love in those moments. I had myself a moment of great grief a few years ago, which informed a lot of where I am at the moment. When we were involved in a protest, in an occupation, and we were trying to save a group of trees and some very, very precious lands in Bristol. And every day was this big build-up of adrenaline when the police or the bailiffs might come, they might turf us out, cut down the trees. We've been staying in the trees in the dead of winter. We've been giving our all to these moments. And where we were, the little community where we were, was roughly divided into two types of people: those who were busy building barricades or building tree sits, and those who were also just sitting with the heartbreak of what it might mean when those trees crash to the ground. And that, for me, brought forth this hardly a philosophy, but this feeling that what we must do more than anything else at the moment is village build at the end of the world, and be ready for all that to be wrecked at any moment. And I think that is possibly one of the biggest callings to presence in these times, for us to discard the illusions of things, of plasma screen televisions, of stability, and just to be ready to and responsible in a purest sense of the word, the ability to respond to these times in a full and meaningful fashion. So yeah, that's where the grief was, and where that's still taking me. And you're going to have to remind me of the rest of it.
Do you want to speak? Would you like to speak? You have spoken a little bit about the trees. I'd love you to maybe give us a little bit of your heart and connection and soul with the other beings and their invitations and their as you said, they seem to be willing to fall until they will fall. They will keep falling.
Yep.
I had a daydream where I saw the last tree on the earth fall. And she said, "We don't mind." And I just burst into tears. I was with 300 women. It was the Women Festival this summer. And I looked and I saw this last tree, and she said, "We don't mind." I was like, what do you want me to do with this love? You know, this surrender to love. And they look at us with no anger, no punishment, no religious hang up, you know, of shame or nothing. And I'd love you to speak to that, because personally, and I know we're having this interview, which is a personal as well as collective interview, these moments have no land that I know of to welcome it. There's nothing, there's no, you know. So I don't know if, what you would like to add to this or weave your threads to this about our relationship to the other beings. And
as you said, I think you said it maybe more eloquently than I ever could. The fact that so much of it is a giving.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that most of humanity at the moment has utterly forgotten. And it's then how we weave our own giving back into that.
Yes.
And that, with each month that passes, might also bring with it an absolutely terrible price. In fact, it's going to. We cannot avoid that at the moment. I see it in the roadsides around me where there are so many deaths every day, and we pass them by. And we let these beings go. They become dust, they become dirt in the road. And the same with the trees. And the same with streams that we've got so used to taps offering water that we've forgotten where it comes from. We've forgotten what it is. So it's a real return to the source that we must be finding here. Yes. And all of that is an offering. And it's then, how do we offer that back? Can we take time out of our days to sing the death song of a fox that's lying in a ditch?
Yes.
Can we make love or sing poetry to a stream that is dirted by pollution? Can we offer ourselves to that?
Yes.
And this partnership we're in at the moment, and it is an absolute partnership if only we take that hand. And these times invite us to take that hand and make that offering ourselves. And that in itself is an acknowledgement of how terrible and how far we've come, because ultimately that must mean that there's an offering of ourselves in death, or to pay a debt of life, or to offer ourselves up to the future.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So unfamiliar with these terms at the moment. All we've done collectively for so long is yearn to be held, and all we've done is take comfort rather than really seek being or presence. And that's where a lot of my fear lies. As you say, like, I also think we have maybe 3 to 5 years.
Yes, could you speak to that? Could you? Yes, thank you.
I see that as the the silence before the wave breaks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, we have forgotten how to listen to water. We have forgotten how to listen to earth. We have forgotten how to listen to the whisper of the trees. But for me, I think from every point of understanding, from what tribes are telling us and have been imploring us to heed, from the messages we are getting from listening deeply to the earth, or listening deeply to the water, as yourself has done, Azul, or whether we want to put it into fancy terms where it's all figures and statistics. But it is the wave will break within 5 years. And then it is up to us how we then manage to flounder, swim, surf, drink deep of those waters. And in some respects, I'm then reminded back to the story of Jumping Mouse, about being in that stream. But that break it's like a zenith, and it will come crashing down on us. And there is no other choice now, because we have not offered enough of ourselves. But it's then how we take that forward. Do we let it twist us? Do we let it embitter us? Do we let it poison us further? Do we hand down the yet more pain through the generations? Or do we say no to that? And do we join in the grief of the world and move forward? And in many respects, I have given up so much hope in the past couple of years, but I'm also wildly optimistic that if enough people step forward, that there is an absolute through line through the next few years, and it will demand much of everybody, absolutely everybody. Families rent asunder, nations, all these things. There is a great unmaking going on. And it's then like, what do we do with the few wisps of cloth that we have left in our hands after the waters have subsided, after the smoke has died down? And it's then, hopefully, that we have enough wisdom and can learn how to reweave life in a much more meaningful fashion. And I mean, all this sounds dramatic. I think language is so very, very bound up in this. We must give up so much of the stale language we've had. At the end of this month, we have the Remembrance for Lost Species. And if we are to offer ourselves, then we must dispel and break the spells of things like lost. We haven't lost these species. They might have offered themselves, but we have destroyed them in the same process. And we must take that on board and let that grief and that terrible knowledge initiate us into the next step of what happens. And
yes, I'm more and more feeling the tempering, the tempering alchemy of grief, and onto our becoming ripen as human beings. I think, to me, this is an initiatory practice, that capacity to grieve, a capacity to keep feeling the water cracking our heart. And something that struck me when you said earlier on about singing, you said something, I might paraphrase, but something like singing the wild song of grief to the dead fox. And I want to say to that, to the people listening who don't have songs, because we've lost our songs, is try anyway.
yes,
Do it badly, do it clumsily, but that is maturity to me. Is to stumble, but the heart is there. And if we just keep singing, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, it's really a beautiful song. It doesn't, there is, I see in many of us, an feeling illegitimate because we don't have a background of indigenous songs and practices and rituals and ceremonies and initiations and all this, which is the language of soul, which is the language of grief. So I want to say we are legitimate because we're here at this time. And so sing, please sing to the dead fox that you find on the side of the road. even if it's one word. I just want to say that because I was very touched by that phrase of yours. And that is, well, I'm really loving this conversation. It warms me. It's very warming. And we're going to wrap up. So just want to say the last line of a poem I've just read today, and I'll let you wrap up what you'd like to say. It's dance the wild dance of no hope. It's the last beautiful, beautiful poem from a woman. I have forgotten her name. I will put it on the YouTube video. It's to learn to dance the wild dance of no hope. And I've been leaning into what is beyond hope, if there is no hope. What is in that void? Because void doesn't stay void very long. So if I lean into the void of no hope, that's interesting. That feels interesting. So I'm gonna. That's how I would like to finish my bit, and would love if you'd like to say something.
Thank you. And again, very much speaks to me there, Azul. I'm a recovering hope addict, and try and give it up all the time. I think what happens when we give up hope is that we live, essentially. We live now. And again, to follow the analogy of the dance, I've done many crazy things in my life. I've diffused landmines. I've walked up to rows of cops and sat down on them and in front of them and prayed. But it's that thing of like, if we don't get up to dance, we will never, ever know the beauty of that dance. And it's like that first time when you may be like 13, 14, and you want to ask a beautiful person to dance, a male or a female, but that fear, that terrible, beautiful fear, it presences you into what is vital in life. But then you have a choice, either to dance and be an absolute clumsy idiot, or to sit on the chair.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Simon. And if people want to be in touch with you, how can they do that? Or support whatever you're doing? Or
well, please look up the ongoing experiment we have called Rising Up and the Extinction Rebellion, or through a page called The Lightning Tree on Facebook, or just look out for me wherever the trouble is.
Thank you for making trouble. So we're going to finish now, and if you'd like to see this video, to see the message of water, it's at the bottom of the video, and SOULand website is www.souland.org. And see you on the road, everyone.
Thank you, Azul.